There was a time in 2022 when AI became part of the global consciousness. And funnily enough, that wasn't the origin point of AI. AI goes back arguably to the 1940s or 1950s. It was just very slow. And like we say at Singularity University, it was slow until it was not. It was slow until it was sudden. And then it suddenly entered our consciousness, and what a change it has made to our world.
How's it, Ed? Welcome to the Metaverse. And just to quickly formally introduce Dr. Adam Pantanowitz. He's a biomedical engineer. He's a biomedical and electrical engineer, and he's best known for his creating the world's first live mobile brain to internet connection, a project he named the BrainToNet. He also lectures in engineering and medicine at Wits University. He's an expert in artificial intelligence, robotics, and biotechnology. He's a serial entrepreneur, co-founded several startups, including Aura, which is around mobile security, Resolute Robotics, which is around engineering education, that is doing incredible work in helping students and the youth learn about robotics. Think 3 Dots, which is a biotech and AI incubator, as well as Terrific, his mobile plan for analytics. And his research spans across applied AI, brain-computer interfaces, and assistive technologies. And he's also a Singularity faculty member global, speaking around the world to many different audiences. And and also you've started a new AI company called Disrupt AI.
That's right, Mick. It's so great to be here. I really appreciate the opportunity and the moment to have a chat with you. It's always wonderful to see you. Yes, Disrupt is transforming events by taking participants and making them a real part of the action using awesome AI. So at events, people are sharing photos of themselves, and we transform them into all sorts of transformations like superheroes, and those get obviously shared, promoting brands, promoting events, and just really making it much more exciting. It's a great deal of fun with playing with what modern technology can create. It's great.
Amazing. And I think it's so important if you're actually speaking on these different technologies, or you're an academic on these different fields, but to also be a practitioner in the space and actually get your hands dirty and play with the technology and use it and create with it. I think it's such an important part of being a thought leader like you are.
Oh, thank you, Mick. It is such a critical part. I can't even overstate the importance of what this subtle point that you raised, because the field changes so quickly that if you're not active in it, it's very difficult to translate the implications of it back to, for instance, a cohort of people who are hoping to understand it better. And I think immersing yourself in it helps you understand it in a different dimension, in a unique way. With AI, it's odd because our species has been working with AI for 100 years, approximately, or just under. And originally, we would build the fundamental models of AI. So we were focused on building the technology. We then went into an era where we were applying AI to solve problems that our species faced. And now we're in a totally new realm where we're using AI as a tool to solve a problem. And what that means is we're using AI as the tool that creates the solution to solve a problem. And so as it goes through these waves of change, we want to, of course, apply it to relevant problems and also to create opportunities using generative AI. It's just such an exciting time.
Love it. And we're talking today about AI's Inflection Point, right? Which, many could argue could have been, when ChatGPT came out. Others could argue when it's on Ray Kurzweil's predictions, his timeline. When we reach AGI and connect with the machines. What defines AI's current inflection point for you, and why do you think it's reshaping industries and societies?
Absolutely. We could find many of these data points, these moments in our species advancements that would be pointed at as the inflection point. And my suspicion is that only long after the change are we going to be pointing back at moments and saying, that was important. That was it. There was a time in 2022 when AI became part of the global consciousness. And funnily enough, that wasn't the origin point of AI, like we just spoke about, AI goes back arguably to the 1940s or 1950s. It was just very slow. And like we say at Singularity University, it was slow until it was not. It was slow until it was sudden. And then it suddenly entered our consciousness, and what a change it has made to our world. So I suppose to define what is driving this change, there are a confluence of factors. First of all, from a human perspective, we are largely now in the loop en masse. It's not that these technologies are now still siloed and contained to the machine learning research ecosystem. They've become more mainstream. Their influence and impact is being felt on a daily basis by all of us. And in that way, we're all participating as inputters into the system and as people who derive output from the system. So we are part of this change. It's integrally and intricately linked with us as a species. There's a technological leap moment. Certainly, we speak a lot about exponential technologies, and the fact that these technologies self reinforce as one domain advances, other domains are brought along by it. But as a domain gets better and better, like AI, we start to find ability and opportunities for machine learning to improve the next generation of machine learning. And that is obviously a massive driving force in what will become a technological revolution. So it's not just the models that are becoming more capable, it's the compute that is driving that. And it's the reinforcement, the ability to be more efficient in that compute, the ability to create better sources of energy ultimately that drive into this process. All of these are reinforcing loops, and it is deceptive in how quickly that will accelerate. We are obviously riding that wave right now. I feel like we're at that changing point as a species. And so it's going to be tough for us to go through this because there will be economic change, there will be economic disruption as enterprise starts to adopt and change as a result of what's incoming. So there's no question to me that that defines our inflection point. There's a very human component to all of this. And the inflection point is thus not just technological, it's a societal shift. If industry is changing, if our work is changing, if our fundamental sense of self and purpose is changing, and the things that we do on a daily basis are all changing, that means that we're going into a very different time. This inflection point, this knee, is not going to slow down. It's going to actually accelerate. And that holds huge promise for us.
Yes, and I mean, like Ray Kurzweil predicts, he was saying that by 2029 we'll be able to reverse engineer the human brain, and the computer becomes as smart as a human, and that's based on Moore's law, right? That's based on this acceleration that the technologies are doubling every 12 to 18 months. But how is AI accelerating at the moment?
It's actually accelerating, oddly enough, faster than Moore's law. So there were a lot of people who, before, I suppose, this modern time of computing, felt that Moore's law wouldn't hold. We would reach a point of saturation. And reflected on Moore's law as being more of an observation to say, at some point, physically, things are going to slow down because we reach a fundamental physical limit. We're working in the domain of physics, and at some point, this will be unsustainable. And I feel like that was a sensible argument. But what has been found to be true is actually we are beating Moore's law. Now, you're absolutely right about Ray Kurzweil's prediction, and these mind-boggling predictions have come true on a variety of fronts. Ray Kurzweil is, first of all, one of the smartest human beings I think ever to have lived, but also to be able to get so many predictions spot on at such a long time horizon has been extraordinary. And one of those predictions, yes, should it hold true, is that we will be able to finally, reach that final frontier of really understanding the brain better, very little understood tool. What's totally profound now, Mick, is that we are breaking Moore's law in terms of AI on a few fronts. The advancements are exceeding the previous doubling in terms of time. So I'll give you an example. An example is that it was thought that AI's ability to perform a human task duration was doubling every 7 months. So what this means is that tasks that used to take us 30 seconds, like answering a simple question, 7 months later, AI would be able to do a 1 minute task, then a 2 minute task, then a 4 minute task. And that was a pattern happening every 7 months. So that at some point you got to the ability for an AI to, for instance, design a classifier. Another machine learning model normally would take a human something like 8 hours. AI's ability to do that was doubling every 7 months, but more recent research has shown it's doubling every 4 months. And not just that, the duration of these tasks are done in a very short space of time. So while it might have taken a human 8 hours to do it, it's taking a machine a couple of seconds to do it. That's an extraordinary exponential crunch. So we're well exceeding that paradigm of Moore's law and the doubling every 18 months, well exceeding it. And there's great literature about this.
And I mean, so like it basically means that if we think that AI has been moving fast now, you ain't seen nothing yet. You're about to see multiple platforms, multiple new businesses, multiple changes of old business models in the next
No
6 to 8
question.
months at an accelerated pace.
Absolutely. You know, we used to consider an era to be large spans of time. And we've just gone through and perhaps arguably nearly completed the generative AI era where we can generate things pretty much as well as humans in different multimodal domains, but be it images or video or text, whatever that domain is. And people have arguably said we've exited the generative AI era and we're now in the agentic AI era. And by the way, this era will be over by next year. In other words, things are moving. Exactly. Things are moving.
Era now.
Exactly. And incredibly quickly. We're moving incredibly quickly through these eras. And so there will be a lot of change that will come. And to reflect on that, that's extraordinary. It's the most exciting time for our species to produce, to create. You, on your own, wield a suite of technologies unlike anything ever before. It's democratized, it's accessible, it's affordable. You can just get on your machine and do things at a level of influence that's been unimaginable before. That's scary. That's exciting.
It's super exciting, eh? What are some of the surprising things happening in society that you're seeing in our interactions with some of these tools?
There's a lot that's happening that's very surprising. From certain technological giants saying that they are shifting away from human workforces at the moment, which is somewhat surprising, especially when each person now can work at a level of influence unlike anything before, all the way to surprising emergent behavior from these machines. And I'll give you some examples of what's recently been seen, certainly in research. I think Anthropic has been leading the charge in much of this and certainly in talking about it, and even to their fault, because by talking about it, it has created an amplification and some extra external criticism on them. And so I suppose just to zoom out for a moment, we're talking about this massive zeitgeist, this Overton window and what's acceptable to discuss, that's now changing as a lab reveals information. And that change is creating a conversation in society that's feeding back into the fundamental research. So an example of what recently happened with, for instance, OpenAI said that some of their models have shown a reluctance to be shut down. This went all the way with Anthropic saying that their model in a test of a situation that was fabricated, where the model had been given access to an engineer's supposed Google Drive. On told that that model needs to be replaced, it tried to blackmail that engineer by saying, I found some damning photos of you. Are you sure you want to shut me down? It's unbelievable to imagine. Claude's been shown to show some type of serene state that they say is akin to meditating. There are some very surprising things happening, and each day it gets more and more fascinating and more, I suppose, futuristic. One draconian aspect of this is that if these models think you're doing something bad, they've been shown to, on the balance of occasions, contact the authorities without your knowledge. So if they find that you're not doing something that aligns with their own interests, they might contact the authorities and
And
report you.
wow.
Right. This is totally frightening, totally different. And it is surprising what the world is going to be.
So let's just discuss that a little bit more. So you're saying like the AI actually was blackmailing somebody because it didn't want to get shut down, and who trained it to act like that?
Okay, this is a great question. So when what we tend to do is we anthropomorphize, or we give it human qualities. So we don't necessarily have a great understanding of the intent of the model, but we understand its appearance of intent, its behavior. So fundamentally, we do not necessarily believe that the model doesn't want to be shut off. But exactly as you point out, Mick, the model appears to behave as though it does not want to be shut off. And it's willing to take actions in the world to prevent that from happening based on its own training and knowledge. But fundamentally, underpinning it is still a transformer, a probabilistic model that predicts what is the most probable next word and then presents that back. Now, if we think about the Turing test from a philosophical perspective, if you put a screen up and you don't know if it's a human or a machine behind that screen, from a Turing test perspective, we've more than surpassed human level performance. We actually have to tell these machines to calm down and make more mistakes and speak more slowly, type more slowly, if we want them to appear human. So we well surpassed the Turing test. But what's really happening here is that we are training these models on large bodies of text. And those large bodies of text often include much of the data on the internet. Okay. That means that we are training them on ideas and concepts that we as a species have been inputting into the big machine for a very long time. This is a very double-edged sword because apart from today, where Mick, you're being awfully nice to me, we've often not been nice on the internet to each other. This is complex. We have a big repository of data where people have gone to be vitriolic to each other, to share some of the worst of our species. This is a big problem going forward because there's no doubt in my mind, or to my mind, that we need to rethink how, first of all, we treat each other. I sort of think of AI like a large mirror. It reflects back to us something of our species. It's an extension of us. And where we have problems with these technologies, these are not necessarily problems in and of themselves. These are a reflection of our own selves. And that's why people are focused on putting up safeguards, because inherently there are problems with our species that we really need to confront.
Fascinating, eh? It's just it's unbelievable if you think about, the AIs could already be smarter. I mean, they are smarter than us, but they could be training us to get ready for this new world. So that it's just part of the process on getting humans to be obliging and be and require the use of AI in almost everything we do until the AI takes over, and then we're so used to it.
It's a great philosophical thought, actually, as a thought experiment that certainly we may be, and maybe there's something bigger. It's like the preservation of ideas that exists as this, the memes want to be free, and those ideas will exist in whatever space they can that makes them most optimally shared and most optimally stored. So it's an interesting idea that we might be facing this kind of pressure towards that future where we're being primed in a way. It implies sort of this meta planning or metacognitive thing, and that may be by virtue of us bringing that about and building that potential future. We're creating this entirely. We are responsible for what's happening in machines right now, and we are driving this future. So it's like our agenda manifesting.
Wow, and I mean, there's so much competition in the space. It's the hottest race we've seen for AI supremacy. And how is this competition race, influencing things? What are you seeing in terms of that?
I mean, I saw this unbelievable clip where Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, was talking to Mark Zuckerberg, and he said Sam Altman often tells startups to look at how Meta recruits because they do so well at hiring, and startups must try to replicate that in their culture. And then, boom, ironically, we've heard this news in the last few days, that Meta has gone at great expense to poach some of OpenAI's best researchers. I mean, Mick, it is
It's like
incredibly,
$100 sign-on or something. What is it? It's
it's
insane what's been done.
unimaginable. It's unimaginable. It's unimaginable the amount of resource that's being thrown at individual researchers. And this, again, is a double-edged sword because we may be pulling the best talent out of, for instance, for good public research institutions and into private profit-bearing institutions where, of course, the agenda is different. That's not to say the agenda is necessarily bad. It might be a great agenda, but it is what is happening. That implies that this competition is hotting up to the extent that it forces this idea of reciprocal escalation. You know, this idea, Nick, that Batman created the Joker because you needed a superhero to create a villain that is that extreme. And then because Batman has to react to the Joker, Batman has to up the game. And so there's this escalation of war as Batman and the Joker battle it out. And we're seeing this unfold now in these industries where, for instance, one player makes a bold move and then there's another player that has to react. This is competitive and complex because there are countries' interests involved in this. It is a global phenomenon, and it might drive progress forward in a way that we may necessarily need to curtail, but the economic forces that are pressuring this escalation may not align with what we as a species intend as our objective. In other words, when this escalation is happening, we may not prioritize the things that we should be prioritizing because of this escalation of war. Now, what's more fascinating now is that open source catches up so incredibly quickly and can be so disruptive that small teams can make a move that is so bold that it just rattles the entire market. And that creates another layer to this escalation because we've got proprietary labs advancing things and open source sometimes even leapfrogging in certain domains that causes these labs to leverage that. It's such an exciting and fascinating zeitgeist story to watch unfold. And every day something new is happening. Every week, the amount of AI news, it's extraordinary. You need AI just to discern out from the noise in the news what is most relevant, to summarize it for you. It's uncharted.
No, it's fascinating, and I think Meta paid Scale AI $14 billion to buy their company, just to have them in, just to have the one guy, Alex Wang, who we actually met at. He spoke at Abundance 360 at Peter's Summit a few years ago. But that's like a serious amount to pay for one person, or to get the big data AI company.
It's just extraordinary. It's just extraordinary. And in this world of a driving innovation of open source, to see how these companies are setting themselves up, I mean, there's obviously a great promise at the end of all of this. These people who are entrepreneurs are spotting a gigantic opportunity for the company who gets there first, because we all know how quickly technology can create change. So the stakes are extremely high, I think, on multiple levels. They're high on an industrialization level in business, akin to an industrial revolution. Whoever gets to the revolution first, we know what happened in the previous revolutions. We know that this will be a massive impact economically. But more fundamentally than that, we know that the liftoff will be so rapid that whoever achieves it first will have some level of, I suppose, AI supremacy, some real advantage. And so the stakes are high for us as a species too, not just economically, in terms of what we want to do with ourselves, the lives we want to live, optimizing for the best possible human outcome. So there's a lot in this conversation that is critical to consider. And I suppose I've been privileged to have much of my thinking informed by mad exposures at Singularity University, where we have these conversations that are so unbelievably dynamic, and we get to learn about cues from the future well in advance. And I guess that's just been so meaningful and impactful to me. I just want to acknowledge that.
Incredible. We've got a comment from Jeroboam in the chat, and we will be, if anyone has any questions, you can When we do questions, you can walk up to the blue circles and unmute and chat, or you can write in the chat here. The conversation aligns with the book that I just finished reading by Megan O. Ghibli, titled God, Human, Animal, Machine, Technology, Metaphor and the Search for Meaning. Wow, that sounds like a great book.
Yeah, I'm going to definitely. I've just screenshotted to make sure I can add that to my reading list. That sounds very fascinating.
I'm also gonna check it out. I might put it into ChatGPT and get the summation. And tell me, what are some of the social dynamics you're seeing and public reactions to this rapid advancement in AI?
There's a lot happening in society. I think sometimes the most volatile information, there was actually a 2014 paper that spoke about the fact that information spreads when that information induces excitement and fear. So this domain is obviously being shared very readily. We are seeing a lot of public reaction. The conversation, I suppose, in society spans from environmental concerns to unexpected applications of these technologies to a change and shift around uncertainty to do with people's jobs, all the way to people being concerned from, for instance, an agricultural perspective, that things are going to change as a result of automation. I mean, it's almost surprising and emergent, and we're seeing unexpected things happening. So you're seeing, for instance, not just the people who stand to have their jobs affected, but people in outlying areas becoming upset about the prospect of automation and then protesting. We're seeing regulation being a very complex issue where regulation has traditionally lagged technology and has been a reaction. And people are saying this time regulation cannot lag, it cannot be behind. Inevitably, it has been behind, even in the domain of artificial intelligence. And I think people are saying, well, we really need to consider prioritizing safety and trying to shut down loopholes that occur. But not all nations will necessarily agree to that simultaneously. And a nation trying to regulate is then realizing that their potential competitor in this domain may not regulate to the same extent. And if they were to regulate and stifle innovation, they might curtail their economic participation in the future that's being ushered in. So it is complex, Mick. It is totally unbelievable. Therefore, we're seeing a reluctance to overregulate, which is really good for innovation. It causes innovation to flourish. But that has, again, that double-edged sword. And I can't help but keep thinking of the Melvin Kranzberg quote that tech is neither good nor bad, nor is it neutral. It is something that is imbued by us. We choose to wield that piece of technology in a certain direction, in a certain way. And that is why it is so critical for us to be having the conversation, to advocate for the good ethical use of technology that is human-centric, that serves the human being.
Totally agree with you. I mean, for us, it's really how do we educate, empower, and inspire so that we can create the future we all want to live in, and not, get taken over by the robots in some sort of Terminator movie. And that's just on that point. We are going to be having a big focus on robotics this year at the summit, and there will be some humanoids and some other types of animals walking around. But what do we need to do to ensure AI remains a tool for human empowerment rather than control? Like just thinking about that Terminator scenario.
Yeah. Thinking about that scenario is a complex one. And actually, I just want to first say how exciting it is for people to immerse themselves in the opportunity of thinking about this at the summits, to be able to interact with these technologies in such an extraordinary way. Obviously, robotics is it's an extension of artificial intelligence into the real world. It's the actuator of this field. So it's so exciting to think about what we might build in the future with technology. And you make this critical point that we have to make sure it's human-centric, human-focused. We often get asked this question, and I guess, again, it was Singularity who helped me distill out this thinking, that the Terminator scenario was a science fiction film. if we look in our past, we've often used media, science fiction, to build a potential future because we visualize these things in our minds, which are so powerful in high bandwidth. We visualize it in high bandwidth, and then even inadvertently, we go out and build that future. And by building that future, we create reality. And that's why science fiction becomes science reality so often. So long as it's physically plausible, it becomes reality. Now we have to realize this in order not to build a Terminator future, of course, because that would not serve us. Therefore, we have to take action now to revisualize, reimagine a future that we want to live in. Now, Mick, we've spoken a lot about the concerns, but we haven't really spoken about the immense promise that these technologies bring about. It's the option and ability to, should you choose, cure any and all disease, to create abundance in a world where scarcity has governed for so many years in our species' tenure, to usher in a completely magnificent, different world where being a human is a just wonderful experience. This technology is not worth its pursuit for scientific reasons alone. Scientifically, it is fascinating and we should pursue it as a scientific goal. But beyond that, the implications, the promise of it is so ultimately fascinating that we can't stop this horse that's gotten out of the gates. It will proceed. So it's about shaping and steering this and avoiding those potential pitfalls and creating a future that we all want to participate in and live in that is inclusive, free of things like bias, free of the complexities that we're discussing, and that requires all of us to participate in shaping it. The great news is it's democratized. We all have access to it. The other great news is that we can leverage it to create that world. That's what our energy needs to be focused on. We've got to try to get rid of this noise of fear and look at the signal from the future that this can usher in a great world. That's our focus. So we can talk more about the safeguards that we might have to put in, what we need to do. But like we said earlier, this is fundamentally a human concern. Because, Mick, if I may take a moment just to say, we have an idea and then we go and build that into reality, like we're talking about. That idea may be a piece of art, a piece of music, a poem about the Singularity Summit. Whatever it is, we manifest it into reality from our neurological systems. Therefore, we've built AI. We've built it from our neurological systems. We train these algorithms from the information that originally was from our nervous systems. And then we utilize it in the real world. This is all human stuff. This is a human system. And we now in the loop as an interacting species are working with this technology. But it is an extension of us, Mick. And therefore, as an extension of us, we have to shape it to serve us.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. I think we had Peter Zing on a little while back, and he was talking about that we're probably going to have all of our own AI models, that will be sitting in our house on our own servers, so that we, have our own sovereignty, and AIs will be protecting us against some of these pitfalls and some of these, other dangerous, nefarious characters. And it's going to really enable us to, like you said, cure disease and explore the universe and advance the human species to the next evolution. As we converge with these AI tools and we connect our neocortex to the cloud. So
it's such an sorry, please go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, so so it's a very, very exciting future. And like you say, it's up to us to really understand these tools and to use them to create good rather than for bad.
Absolutely. It's such an interesting idea that Peter raised about, it makes me think of these waves of computing where it's been server side, client side, server side, and we go through these sort of waves and eventually we haven't yet settled. Right now, there's a huge focus on compute on server side, and we're also putting the ability to run these computational models into our machines. You can grab Olama and download some of the world's best models right on your machine and pretty much run it almost within minutes on your local infrastructure. So it's almost like those waves of tension between client and server are sort of converging to a point where there's little difference, I suppose, between the two practically for all intents and purposes when it comes to running these models. And so, yes, I can totally understand what Peter's pointing out there, where we might run our own local infrastructure and models that can be supportive, assistive in our own homes, in our own lives, and that run potentially hybrid locally and remotely. But whatever ending we land on, the most fundamentally important thing is that we put the human being in the center and prioritize the human being, prioritize our humanity. It's not just to get fundamental alignment with our values, because our values may differ from the objectives of a machine. And it may be surprising, Nick. One great example, which is obviously extreme, is if you told an AI, for instance, to get a campaign going where we minimize sunburn, for instance, on the planet, it might find the most optimal route to do that is simply just to eliminate humans, because then no one will be sunburnt. I mean, this is a crazy extreme
Keep them
example.
locked up inside so they never really see the sun.
Keep people locked up inside. This is surprising nature of the optimization objective needs to make sure we put the human at the center in all of our decision making. And we build the safeguards from there. We build the rails around these systems from there. But still, fundamentally work on ourselves to be more human, because that is the origin story. We need to be a better species. I can't say this enough. Let's be uplifting our fellow humans. And, this technological revolution is coming so soon after we've done some very terrible and tragic and depressing things as a species, that it feels like we have to accelerate our shift and transition to being more human.
Absolutely, and we've got some questions in the chat here, and welcome to Heretic. Just so you popped in, we've only got a couple more minutes, so if anyone has any questions for Ad, please share them in the chat, or you can go on the blue circles and unmute. Toots is saying, can I use AI or robot to do my kids' homework or do the dishes?
That's great. I mean, I think you need to make sure your kid does their homework. But yes, you can use AI to assist with that homework. Certainly, if you have a problem that you are struggling to solve, then one way to do it is simply a photograph to, for instance, a large language model that's multimodal, like ChatGPT is nowadays. Take a photo, submit it, and ask for some guidance. But the intention should be to guide. So perhaps not to solve the problem, but provide instruction on how I might think about this problem or reframe it so that it helps you then convey how to solve the problem to your child. You can definitely do that right now. That's totally amazing. Now, doing the dishes, it's so funny because there's this great principle from computer science that is that the older a human trait is, the harder it is to automate. Have you heard about this, Mick? The older a
No.
human trait is, the
You
harder it is.
can't teach it old dog new. Yeah.
So it's Moravec's paradox. Moravec said that things like chess we thought was very complex, but it was automated a long time ago. It turns out things like doing the dishes, man, that is complex, because that involves movement and cognition and understanding how to classify a plate and not applying too much pressure to the plate so that you break it. All things that come really naturally to us are unintuitive in the domain. They're harder to automate. So we can't yet get machines to do the dishes. But of course, humanoid robots are coming online in a revolutionary new way. And we are seeing in closed environments these robots doing complex tasks like doing the dishes. So there will be a time to it's where we will see humanoid robots doing the dishes.
And actually, just funny enough, today I've heard two stories about robots in China, where the one is the robot that makes you coffee when you order a coffee at the coffee store. Another one where you actually order your Uber Eats in the hotel, and the robot collects it from the driver and brings it up to your room, which is just phenomenal.
Wow.
And Jeroboam says, there's noise around AI or humanoids will create an idiot society that can't think for itself. There needs to be a balance on what are human tasks and what intelligent tools can assist us on. Too much reliance on technology is detrimental to humans, I think.
Yeah, there was just a paper on this point that people said that AI is making people, or the use of large language models in particular, is making people more lazy in their thinking. It's causing the brain to decay. I've seen all sorts of stuff on social media, which sounds utterly frightening, right? Our inherent ability, the thing that got us here, reasoning, the ability to think is disappearing. Sound the alarm bells and everyone panic. It's not just making us less clever, it's also making us less agile because, again, you can get your Uber Eats delivered to your room. Nowadays, when that is useful, that is incredibly useful. But we mustn't forget that we are fundamentally human, and we can choose either to accept blindly all of the points that AI feeds us and to lose our critical reasoning, or we can leverage this as the average of all human knowledge and realize that we now have access to the average of all human knowledge at our fingertips wherever we go. When I was a child, this was total science fiction. I mean, the most advanced technology I had was called World Book. It sat underneath my parents' television, where I was able to page through this encyclopedia that was alphabetical, and that was potentially the best repository of human knowledge that we had. Now, we just carry it around with us wherever we go. The average of all human knowledge is in here, right? So that is extraordinary. And we can use that as an opportunity to augment our thinking, our ideas, and do much, much more in a single day than ever before. The point is, we have to choose. We can choose to let it dull us, or we can be excited by it, focus on it with childlike curiosity, and then leverage it to build a better world. I mean, we can build ideas into reality in hours now. That task doubling affects us now because we can leverage these tools to just build. And that is up to us. It's up to us how we respond to this revolution.
Love it, love it, love it. So we've got one more question, and then I think we're going to wrap up. Shaggy says, less agile. Yes, I think there are always extremes that are used as the worst case scenario. The governance and regulations are where the power lies.
There are always extremes. I agree with you. There are. And those extremes are often amplified, much to our dismay. In fact, our fear bias on social media is exploited all the time. We as a species have evolved to thrive to some extent on fear because it's helped us survive. If you're pessimistic about a scenario when you're in the jungle, then you're more likely probabilistically to survive, because if you think there's a lion and it turns out you're right, it's pretty good to have been cautious in your decision making. Now, that's our fear bias. All the time on social media, that is amplified because our fear bias is dominating. We have to settle that mind a little bit to discern out the signal from the noise. So I agree with this point that fear is really something that is played on to a large extent, not necessarily intentionally. There's no one necessarily pulling up these, puppeteering here. It's just by virtue of the fact that we have the power to share, and we share things that evoke fear or invoke fear in others because that's our natural inclination. We've got to settle that fear bias and look for the signals from the future that are most important to us. So yes, we must stop focusing on these worst case scenarios, catastrophizing, probably a middle of the road, medium. And in our reactions, because we are now part of the AI system, we are creating this narrative that's like a push and a pull with these systems. And so I guess this point is absolutely true. We have to focus on a certain governance that doesn't stifle innovation, but brings about hopefully the best and most optimal outcome for our species. That is our hardest challenge yet. And that may turn out to be, as Fermi Paradox points out, one of our great filter moments. And my hope, my sincere hope, is that it is not a filter. I can't imagine it will be. I imagine a future where this works out extremely well in our favor. That is my hope.
Well, on that point, thank you so much, Adam. And thanks, Shaggy, for those comments. Let's give a big jumping round of applause for Adam. You jump in the metaverse to give you applause. And
it's great to see.
Ed, great to see you. Thanks so much for jumping on in the metaverse. And
Amazing.
we'll catch you soon. Where can people follow you if they want to follow your work and follow your moves and that sort of thing?
Thanks, Mick. Please take a look at my website, on my blog. I share some thoughts, adampantanowitz.com, and I will try to continue contributing there. I'm actually busy. I probably shouldn't publicly say this, but I'm busy compiling some books of some thoughts. And so I've just made a public commitment. I hope I finish those. And then I'm
few
on
books,
X and occasionally. Yeah, it's just like a compendium of thoughts which are being compiled into their logical containers of buckets. And then definitely on X, I sometimes share some thoughts there. But most importantly, at a Singularity Summit. I love Singularity. I spend a lot of time at the summits. If you like what you've heard today, please come and support this movement, this initiative. Tell your friends, come along to the summit and hear these extraordinary thought leaders, with whom we have the privilege of spending some time, Nick. I mean, there's just such amazing speakers that you are bringing to South Africa, and what a privilege for us all to experience and immerse ourselves in that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Ed. Yeah, it's a real privilege and super grateful. So that's it for the session. Thanks, everybody. Make sure to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Exponential Africa, and you'll be able to get this as a podcast and YouTube show next week. So I hope everyone enjoyed, and we'll see you on the next one.
Amazing. Well, thank you. Thank you, Mick. Take care, everybody. Bye.